I placed the final suitcase by the door and checked my watch. 6 a.m. I'd been up since 4, preparing everything for Dad and Janet's 3-week European vacation. Dad? Janet? The airport shuttle will be here in 15 minutes. I called up the stairs of the guest house. At 38, I've mastered the art of caregiving. It began at 16 when Mom died suddenly, leaving me to raise my 2 younger siblings while Dad retreated into grief. Those early mornings making lunches, those late nights helping with homework, hardened into a permanent role: family caretaker. "Coming, sweetheart." Dad's voice carried down the stairs, followed by the sound of shuffling luggage. I smiled despite my exhaustion. Last night I'd stayed up finalizing their itinerary: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all paid for with my savings. The historic Victorian home I'd purchased last year had stretched me financially thin, but seeing Dad happy was worth it. At least that's what I kept telling myself. "Your coffee is on the counter," I said, straightening the travel documents on the entryway table. "And I packed those digestive biscuits you like, Janet." The morning light filtered through the bay windows, illuminating the guest house I'd renovated specifically for them. My own home, the main house, sat just 50 yards away, a beautiful $800,000 property I'd bought after years of careful saving and a small inheritance from Mom. If you're enjoying my journey of family sacrifice and the price of loyalty, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell to catch every new chapter of my story as soon as it's released. Your support means everything, just like mine did to my family. "Olivia, you've thought of everything," Janet said, appearing at the bottom of the stairs in her traveling outfit. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Dad followed, handsome at 64 with his silver hair and confident stride. "That's our girl. Always taking care of everyone." I busied myself with last-minute details, ignoring the familiar ache that came whenever I heard those words. Our girl. As if my entire identity was wrapped up in what I did for others. "I've arranged for the yard service to come while you're gone," I said, handing them their passports. "And I'll check the guest house every few days, make sure everything's in order for when you return." "You work too hard," Dad said, patting my shoulder. "Between your job and taking care of this place and us, when do you have time for yourself?" The question hung in the air, rhetorical. We both knew the answer was, I didn't. "I've transferred extra spending money to your travel card," I said, changing the subject. "Just in case you want to take that gondola ride in Venice." Janet touched Dad's arm. "Can you imagine? 3 whole weeks away?" "Finally getting away," he replied, exchanging a glance with Janet that made me pause. There was something in that look. Relief? Eagerness? I couldn't quite place it, but it sent a cold trickle down my spine. The shuttle's horn sounded outside. "That's you," I said, pushing the strange moment aside. I hugged them both, helped load their luggage, and waved as the shuttle pulled away. Standing alone in the driveway, I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. A strange emptiness settled over me, like the quiet after a storm. "Finally getting away," I repeated to myself, Dad's words echoing with an unexpected hollowness. I hadn't planned to clean the guest house until tomorrow, but something about that strange look between Dad and Janet kept nagging at me. 3 days had passed since they'd left, and I found myself unlocking their door, telling myself I just wanted to make sure everything was in order. The guest house felt different without them, quieter, almost peaceful. I ran my fingers along the mantel I'd restored myself, remembering how Dad had insisted on the expensive imported marble. "Only the best for your old man," he'd joked, though we both knew it wasn't really a joke. I started in the kitchen, wiping down counters and checking the refrigerator for anything that might spoil. Their bedroom was next. Stripping sheets, dusting surfaces, the mindless routine of care I'd performed countless times before. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Dad's name lit up the screen. My heart jumped. Were they okay? "Dad," I answered, but there was no response. Just muffled sounds, distant voices. He must have accidentally dialed me. I was about to hang up when I heard my name. Olivia's always been a burden, Dad said, his voice clear despite the distance from the phone. Ever since her mother died. I froze, dust cloth suspended midair. She's too needy, Janet agreed, her voice closer to the phone. Always hovering, always trying to please. It's exhausting. Dad laughed, a sound I'd always loved. Thank God we're away from her constant problems for a while. 3 whole weeks of freedom. She thinks we don't know about the house, Janet said, that we don't know it's all in her name. Let her believe what she wants. She needs to feel important, like she's taking care of us. Meanwhile, we get to live in that beautiful guest house rent-free. And now a European vacation, Janet added. All expenses paid by our golden daughter. She's so desperate for approval she'd give us anything, Dad said. Remember when she took out that loan to help me with those gambling debts? Never even questioned it. The dust cloth slipped from my fingers. The best part is she thinks I've stopped gambling, Dad continued. I've just gotten better at hiding it. That's what this trip is really about. I've got a line on some high-stakes games in Monte Carlo. Using her money, Janet laughed. Of course. What else is she good for? My legs gave way, and I sank to the edge of the bed. Their voices continued, cataloging years of manipulation, of taking advantage, of mockery behind my back. Remember her last boyfriend? The one who actually saw through us? Dad was saying. Oh, yes, Janet replied. You made sure he didn't stick around. Couldn't risk losing our meal ticket. Olivia will never know. She sees what she wants to see. A father who needs her. I should have hung up. Instead, I listened for 23 minutes as they dissected my life, my choices, my naive devotion. When Dad finally realized his phone was on and ended the call, I sat motionless on their bed, surrounded by the luxury I had provided. The phone slipped from my fingers onto the perfectly polished hardwood floor. I felt hollowed out, as if everything inside me had been scooped away, leaving nothing but an echo chamber for their cruel words. A burden? I whispered to the empty room. I pressed the phone to my chest, a dam breaking inside me. Tears came, then anger, then something colder and more resolute. In that moment, I made myself a silent promise. I didn't cry again after that first night. By morning, something had crystallized inside me, hard and clear as diamond. I'd spent 22 years being the dutiful daughter, the one who sacrificed everything. No more. My first call was to Marianne Chen, a realtor I'd met when I purchased the house. Olivia, how are you enjoying that beautiful Victorian? I need to sell it, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Quickly, for cash. There was a pause on the line. That's unexpected. You seemed so in love with the place. Things change. How fast can it happen? 3 hours later, I sat across from Marianne in her sleek downtown office. There's a developer who's been buying up properties in your neighborhood. He might offer cash, but not full market value. How much? Maybe $720,000. It's a significant loss from what you paid. I nodded. Set up a meeting. My next stop was Edward Goldstein's law office. He'd handled my mother's estate years ago. The house is solely in your name, Olivia, he confirmed, reviewing the property documents. Your mother left it specifically to you in her will, though I understand you've allowed your father to believe he has some ownership stake. He has none, I said, needing the confirmation. None whatsoever. You're the exclusive owner and can sell without anyone's permission. Something loosened in my chest. And the proceeds? Entirely yours. By afternoon, I was meeting with Diane Torres, a financial advisor who specialized in offshore accounts. I need to move funds where they can't be easily traced or accessed by others, I explained. She didn't ask questions, just outlined options. I chose the most secure one. Back home that evening, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by documents. The developer had already made an offer. $735,000 cash closing in 10 days. Better than expected. My phone pinged with a text from Dad. Cathedral in Barcelona is breathtaking. Janet says hi. Missing your cooking, though. My hand trembled as I set the phone face down. I picked up the pen to sign the sale agreement, but hesitated. Memories flooded in unbidden. Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway of our old house. The Christmas he saved for months to buy me a silver locket. His face beaming with pride at my college graduation. Had it all been a lie? A performance to keep his meal ticket happy? I remembered the day I'd shown him this house. "It's perfect, Liv," he'd said, his arm around my shoulders. "Your mother would be so proud of what you've become." What had I become? A doormat. A resource to be exploited. The transfer papers seemed to blur before my eyes. Signing meant leaving behind not just the house, but everything. The fantasy of family I'd clung to. The hope that somehow my sacrifices mattered. My pen hovered over the signature line. Through the window, I could see the guest house where I'd heard those awful words. "She's a burden." What else is she good for? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and signed my name. Not a burden anymore. The next 10 days moved with mechanical precision. I made lists, checked them twice, and executed each step with cold efficiency. First came the sorting. Every room, every closet, every drawer. I divided everything into 3 categories: donate, store, discard. The process was strangely liberating. My great-grandmother's china set that Dad had always claimed would be his someday? Boxed and delivered to a women's shelter. The antique desk where Mom used to write letters. To a literacy program for underprivileged children. The leather armchair Dad considered his spot. Donated to a veterans center. "Are you redecorating?" asked the donation center driver on his 3rd trip. "Something like that," I replied, handing him a box of family photos, keeping only those of Mom and my siblings. The closing on the house happened in record time. The developer was eager, the paperwork clean. I watched the funds transfer into my account with a strange detachment, as if I were observing someone else's life being liquidated. Diane, my financial advisor, had arranged everything. "The bulk of the money will be transferred to accounts in Singapore and the Cayman Islands," she explained. "Untraceable, secure, and accessible only to you through these protocols." I nodded, memorizing the information. A small portion would remain in a domestic account, enough to disappear without a trace. Next came my new identity. Not legally changed, but practically speaking, a fresh start. I leased a cabin in a remote coastal town 3 states away, using cash and minimal paperwork. I'd visited once on a solo trip years ago, the kind of place where neighbors respected privacy and asked few questions. 3 months minimum, I told the property manager over the phone. Possibly longer. I resigned from my job by email, citing family emergency. No exit interview, no goodbye party. 10 years at the company ended with a single message. The movers came for the few things I'd keep: my mother's jewelry, my personal clothes, books, and the small writing desk I'd had since college. 1 truck, half empty, headed for a storage facility 2 towns over from my destination. "The rest stays with the house?" the foreman asked, gesturing to the still-furnished rooms. "Yes, the new owner will handle it." On the final day, I walked through the empty house, footsteps echoing against hardwood floors. Strange how quickly a home becomes just a structure, walls and ceilings holding nothing but air. In the kitchen, I sat down to write the note. 3 drafts later, I had it. 5 words that said everything. Surprise. A burden did this. I sealed it in an envelope with the single key I'd left for them, addressed simply, Dad and Janet. As I finished, my phone chimed. Dad's text lit up the screen. "Flight confirmed for tomorrow. Can't wait to be home. You're the best daughter anyone could ask for. Love you, Liv." I stared at those words. Best daughter. Remembering his voice on the phone. What else is she good for? For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was there another explanation? But there wasn't. 23 minutes of unfiltered truth had shattered 22 years of illusion. I left the note on the counter where they'd be sure to find it, locked the door behind me, and walked to my packed car without looking back. By nightfall, I was 200 miles away, my old phone discarded at a rest stop, my new life beginning with each mile that separated me from the burden I'd finally put down. Dawn broke as I drove away from the city I'd called home my entire life. The sky painted itself in watercolor hues, pinks and oranges bleeding into blue, a beauty I'd never fully appreciated before. My rearview mirror framed the skyline growing smaller, a life receding. 3 weeks to the day since they'd left for Europe. They would be landing in 2 hours. I'd timed everything perfectly. The new owners, a young developer named Marcus and his team, had been surprisingly accommodating when I explained my situation. Not the whole truth, just enough. My father and his wife believe they have ownership rights to the property, I told Marcus during our final meeting. They don't. I need them to understand that when they return. Marcus had nodded, his eyes kind but businesslike. We'll be there, and we'll give them the note. Now, as highway signs blurred past my windows, I imagined how it would unfold. Their shuttle from the airport, the familiar route home, Dad probably telling Janet about plans for Thanksgiving, how I always made his mother's stuffing recipe, the way the house looked in autumn light. Their suitcases would thump against the driveway as they approached the front door, tired but happy to be home. The key wouldn't turn. I pictured Dad's confused expression, trying again, the slight worry in his voice as he'd say, "That's strange." Then the knock, more insistent each time. The door would open, but not to me, to Marcus or one of his team. "Can I help you?" he would ask, polite but firm. "There's been a mistake," Dad would say. "This is my daughter's house." "I'm afraid not, sir. I purchased this property 10 days ago." I imagined the color draining from Dad's face, the way he'd look to Janet in confusion, the mounting panic. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake. Olivia? Olivia!" They would try to push past, perhaps catch a glimpse of the emptied rooms, the missing furniture, the absence of any trace that we had ever lived there. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back," Marcus would say. "I have the deed right here if you'd like to see it. Where is my daughter? What have you done with her? The previous owner asked me to give you this." And then the envelope would pass from Marcus's hand to Dad's, those trembling fingers tearing it open, expecting an explanation, perhaps a temporary misunderstanding. 5 words instead. Surprise. A burden did this. I could see his face crumpling with realization. The phone coming out immediately, dialing my number. At that exact moment, 600 miles away, I pulled into a roadside diner. My old phone, left behind in a trash can at a gas station 3 states back, would ring emptily. My new phone, purchased with cash, sat silent in my pocket. I ordered coffee and watched the rain begin outside the window, imagining Dad's increasing desperation as call after call went unanswered. The panic rising as he tried my work, my friends, growing more frantic with each dead end. By now, they would be standing in the rain on the sidewalk, luggage soaked, the reality sinking in. No home, no daughter, no explanation beyond those 5 damning words that echoed his own. The waitress refilled my coffee. "You look like you're a million miles away, honey." I smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. Not quite a million, but far enough. Back in the city, Dad would be calling my name into the emptiness where his safety net had once been. But I was beyond hearing now, beyond caring. The burden had set herself free. 3 months passed like a dream. My small coastal cabin had become a sanctuary, a place where no one expected anything from me but rent paid on time. The town of Seacliff was everything I needed, small enough to disappear in, large enough that newcomers weren't oddities. I'd opened a modest bookshop in a weathered blue building facing the harbor. Nothing fancy, just second-hand books and a corner for coffee. Burden-free books, I'd named it. A private joke that made me smile each time I unlocked the door. "Morning, Olivia," Ellen called from her bakery across the street. "Saved you a cranberry scone?" I waved, still marveling at how easily friendship came when it wasn't tangled with obligation. Ellen knew nothing about my past, just that I was new in town, loved books, and appreciated her baking. It was refreshing, this simplicity. Inside the shop, morning light spilled across worn wooden floors. I'd arranged the space carefully. Comfortable chairs, shelves organized by feeling rather than genre. Books that make you brave sat next to stories for starting over. My first customer of the day was Sam, a retired English teacher who came in most mornings. "The usual?" I asked, already pouring his black coffee. "You know me too well already," he smiled, settling into the armchair by the window. No demands, no expectations, just appreciation for the small kindness of remembering how he took his coffee. By afternoon, the shop had seen a steady stream of customers. I closed briefly at 3 to check my secure email account, the only connection I maintained to my old life. There was a message from Edward, my lawyer, the only person who knew where I'd gone. "Olivia? Just an update as requested. Your father has been making inquiries about accessing your mother's trust fund, which, as you know, doesn't exist. Sources tell me they've moved into a small apartment. Apparently, Janet's son refused to take them in. Financial difficulties seem significant. They've hired a private investigator to find you, but the trail ends at the storage facility. Let me know if you need anything else. Edward." I closed the laptop, surprised by my lack of emotion. No satisfaction, no guilt, just acknowledgement of information. They were facing the natural consequences of their actions, living without the safety net I'd always provided. Later that evening, I sat on my small deck overlooking the ocean. The sunset painted the water gold, reminding me of nothing and no one. Just beauty, existing for its own sake. My phone, my new phone, with only new contacts, buzzed with a text from Kelly, a local artist I'd met at the farmer's market. "Dinner tomorrow? Found a new Thai place." I smiled as I texted back, "Sounds perfect." Another friendship forming naturally without the weight of history or obligation. As twilight deepened, I felt something I hadn't recognized at first. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of constant anxiety, of always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The sound came suddenly, 3 sharp knocks on my front door. I froze. No one knew where I lived except Ellen, who I'd had over for wine last week, and she would have texted first. 3 more knocks, more insistent this time. I moved silently to the window, easing the curtain aside just enough to see. A familiar silhouette stood on my porch, illuminated by the porch light. My sister. I opened the door just enough to see her face. Emma. My little sister, 12 years younger, the one I'd practically raised after Mom died. "How did you find me?" I asked, not inviting her in. "I've been looking for 3 months," she said. Her eyes were tired, her hair shorter than I remembered. "The private investigator Dad hired was useless, but I remembered how you once mentioned this town. Said it was the only place you ever felt at peace." I'd forgotten that conversation. One casual comment years ago, and here she was. "Are you going to let me in, or should I just stand here all night?" I stepped aside, noting how she scanned the cabin, taking in the minimalist furniture, the books, the single coffee mug on the counter. "So this is where you disappeared to while Dad lost everything." "He lost nothing," I said, my voice even. "He never owned anything to lose." Emma's laugh was bitter. "God, you're cold now. What happened to my sister who cried when neighborhood cats got lost?" "She grew up." I leaned against the counter. "Did Dad send you to bring me back?" "Dad doesn't know I'm here." She dropped onto my sofa, uninvited. "He's a mess, by the way, not that you care." "Why are you here, Emma?" She looked up, and for a moment I saw the little girl whose nightmares I'd soothed. "I need to understand. We all woke up one day and you were just gone. Everything was gone." "You know what he did?" "I know he said some terrible things." She twisted her hands. But to sell the house? To disappear without a word? Do you have any idea what that did to us? Us? The word stung. So you're on his side. There shouldn't be sides. We're family. Family doesn't call you a burden behind your back. Family doesn't use you for money and laugh about it. Emma's eyes widened. Is that what you think this is about? One phone call? 23 minutes, I corrected. 23 minutes of truth after 22 years of lies. She shook her head. You don't know everything, Liv. Then enlighten me. Dad was wrong. What he said was unforgivable. But do you know why he resents you so much? Her voice cracked. Because Mom made him promise to let you live your own life, and instead you became her replacement. You were 16, taking care of everything, refusing help. I had no choice. You had no boundaries, and it made him feel like a failure every single day. The words hit like physical blows. That doesn't excuse— Nothing excuses what he said, Emma interrupted. But your revenge? Leaving him homeless, leaving all of us, was that justified? I turned away, unable to meet her eyes. You weren't there. You didn't hear— I've heard plenty. Dad's gambling, his manipulation. But I've also heard about every soccer game you missed because you were working 2 jobs. Every relationship that failed because you put us first. She stood up. You became a martyr, Liv, and martyrs make everyone around them feel like sinners. Her words hung in the air between us. I have a life now, I said finally, without obligations. And we have nothing, she replied, moving toward the door. Was it worth it? After she left, I sat alone in the silence of my perfect, peaceful cabin, asking myself the same question. 6 months after Emma's visit, my little bookshop had flourished. Regular customers filled the chairs, book club meetings spilled out onto the sidewalk on warm evenings, and for the first time in my life, I was known for something other than taking care of others. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by a courier who required my signature. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Dad. For a long time, I just held it, feeling its weight. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. I'd finally found peace. Did I really want to invite chaos back in? Eventually, I took it to the beach, sat on the rocks where I often watched the sunset, and broke the seal. Olivia, it began. No dear, no terms of endearment. I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did, what I said, is unforgivable. I exploited your generosity for years. I took advantage of your loyalty. Worse, I mocked the very qualities that make you extraordinary. Emma didn't tell me she found you. She came back different, though. Asked me questions I couldn't answer. Made me face truths I'd been running from. The truth is, I failed you long before you heard that phone call. I failed you the day your mother died, when I let a 16-year-old girl become the parent. I resented you for being strong when I was weak, for succeeding where I failed. I'm getting help now. Real help, not just promises. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. Not to ask for anything, just to say these things to your face. You deserve that much. I'll be at the Harbor Cafe in Seacliff next Saturday at noon. If you don't come, I understand. I won't try to find you again. With regret and with respect, Dad. I read it 3 times, searching for manipulation, for guilt trips, for the familiar patterns. Found none. Saturday came. I arrived at 12:15, deliberately late, half hoping he'd already given up and left. He hadn't. He sat alone at a corner table, older than I remembered, smaller somehow. Olivia, he said, standing awkwardly when he saw me. He didn't try to hug me. Dad. We sat across from each other, strangers connected by blood and betrayal. Thank you for coming, he said. I almost didn't. He nodded. I would have understood. The conversation that followed was unlike any we'd ever had. Raw, honest, painful. He spoke of his failures, his resentments, his shame. I spoke of my anger, my hurt, my newfound freedom. I'm not coming back, I told him finally. That life is over. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to. What are you asking for then? He looked out at the harbor, at the boats rocking gently on the tide. Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you. Not as an extension of myself or a solution to my problems, just as Olivia. We parted without promises, without plans for future meetings. Just a nod of recognition. Of the past we'd shared, the pain we'd caused, the separate paths ahead. As I walked away, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. Not forgiveness, exactly. Understanding, perhaps. Or maybe just the final release from a role I'd never asked for. No longer the golden daughter, no longer the burden. Just Olivia, walking her own path, finally free.